San Francisco 49ers at the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins favored by 1.5 here at home. A couple 6-8 teams, unexpected coming into the season. This looked like a great matchup. At the very beginning of the year, two teams that have disappointed a little bit. Dolphins still have their issues playing good teams. I don't know where that puts us here. If it's a team with a losing record, but they're good. Can Miami beat them? And of course, you have the Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel matchup, the former co-workers, of course.
Former co-workers. Yeah, absolutely. And so where does this fit in the Miami narrative scale, right?
So the way I looked at it, I just looked at the end of season record. Was a team 500 or better? And when teams were, they're 15-4 against teams that were 500 or worse, and 2-10 against teams that were above 500. And honestly, if I did 500 or better, it would be 2-11 versus 15-3.
Okay.
And so it's at the end of the season. So if the Niners win, their next three, or two out of the next three, they're in a different bucket here. So I don't know. I don't know where you put this.
Well, that's the question, right? Does this count as a narrative game because they're both 6-8 teams. So if Miami beats the 49ers at home, is that a team we expect them to beat or not?
If they beat them, then of course they beat them because the Niners can't have a winning record. So obviously that's why that happened. If they lose, then the Niners will probably end up having a winning record. And obviously we knew that was going to happen because the Dolphins can't beat good teams.
Right. So if they win, it definitely plays into the narrative. If they lose, we don't know if it plays into the narrative yet until we see how the 49ers do in their next two games. Is that what you're saying?
It's one of the rare times where Miami can control the narrative here. They can control it.
It's like Schrodinger's narrative. We don't know yet whether or not this is actually going to matter with the narrative.
Maybe we didn't highlight it enough last week, or we did in the preview show, but it was Dolphins against the Texans, and we brought up the point that, hey, Bobby Slowick's on one side, Mike McDaniel's on the other side. They're coming out of the same offense, and now you've got back-to-back weeks where the Dolphins are facing their former co-worker here. And maybe that was a part of the reason why Tua struggled so much, and it felt like he was throwing blind into a sea of 7 Texans in the middle of the field on a bunch of plays. Do the Niners have those same answers for the Dolphins offense? Because I'll say of all the offenses, Slowick's Texans offense, they've hit a bit of a lull. I think it's a lot of personnel-driven stuff. Yeah. I think Miami's hit the biggest schematic wall of all of those coaches, where they have a couple staples that they like, and when they're cooking, they're really good. But if you take those away, their offense, looks like night and day.
And remember, for some reason, this entire coaching tree are they more narrative, attached than any other coaching tree? Like, for some reason, every one of these coaches, there's like, oh, they can't, they can't be this coach, they can't be this scheme, they can't play in cold weather, can't be good teams. Like, there's always a narrative attached to every single one of these, like, Shanahan coaching tree people. But one of the many narratives attached to Kyle Shanahan is him against former people that he worked with has always been exceptionally good. Like, when there's a shared history of a scheme, Shanahan appears to get the better of that. Like, remember, anytime he goes up against like the opposing defense, he knows where the weaknesses are. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows how to exploit it. So if that is a thing, that McDaniel has blind spots in his scheme and just showed them last week, you would imagine Shanahan will be all over that and know exactly where to put people so that they're going to pick off, predetermined Tua passes to a spot over the middle.
I wonder if that is a part of it. It might be. Is probably then the analyst in me says the sample size is too small to lean into that at all.
Right.
I would say the same thing about Shanahan blowing fourth quarter leads, but he does seem to do it at a higher rate. Does do it actually at a higher rate than others. So who the heck knows? It'll be a fun one though. I think it still could be a very good game. Purdy and the Niners offense, I think they're still capable in any given week. You brought up Deebo Samuel. I think is he in your lineup this week? Yeah. Deebo, right? Mm-hmm. The squeaky wheel type of game or bounce back type of game after he was talking a lot last week and struggled. And every week Miami has that ability to overall Tua's had a really good year, spread the ball around. They just haven't been as downfield explosive as they were the first 2 years with McDaniel, using Tyreek Hill and Waddle down the field.
Somebody made the point recently that Purdy's performance essentially since Brandon Aiyuk went down has been bad. Like the 49ers, again, narrative team, the most narrative team in the NFL. Every year there's a different 49er.
Single player fragility. It's a different player that's fragile.
So every year it's like a different player that is the key to this offense functioning, right? Like last year it was Debo. When you took Debo out of the lineup, a completely different team. Previously it's been Christian McCaffrey. Now all of a sudden it's Brandon Aiyuk. And always there's a confounding factor. Like there's also when Debo was down, it always overlaps with Trent Williams as well. Like maybe Trent Williams is actually the glue that keeps this whole thing together. But Trent Williams not being there at left tackle takes away arguably the best offensive lineman in all of football from an offensive line that's already not great on paper. Trent Williams hasn't played for a while now, and the offense has not been the way we expect it to look. Also, Brandon Aiyuk has been down. He's not coming back. Like, those are two of the most important players on this team, and they don't have them.
Yeah, I don't know what you do with that other than they're just all stars, right? I mean, when the Niners lose a player, they lose a star. I mean,
usually,
when Dallas, I'm looking at their depth chart, it's up. When Dallas loses Brandon Cooks, it's a loss. Would love to have Brandon Cooks, but he's not a star. You know, I mean, so it's a different loss for them versus someone else. You used to call him Tin Cup, man. He used to always make do with whatever he had, but
not anymore.
We see less of that. They do seem more fragile when their stars go down in recent years here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Trent Williams being down is a huge thing for them. Brandon Aiyuk, I think they can overcome, but it's a huge loss. I mean, he's a dynamic playmaker that does things differently to anybody else in that offense. McCaffrey down. Isaac Guerendo went into that game last week with a foot injury, came out of it with a hamstring or a knee or something. Like, he's questionable as well. So they just can't get away from being beat up.
The last thing is you have two similar quarterbacks in Brock Purdy and Tua, who you say, oh, well, they're limited physically, but they play this offense better than anyone else. We've seen Purdy elevate this offense more than Garoppolo did. We've seen Tua elevate his offense more than all of his backups did. They don't have the best velocity in the world, but they both play with pretty good anticipation. They play differently from a style standpoint. Purdy's going to do a lot more scrambling and ad-libbing, but there's this perceived cap with what they could bring to the table as well. So there's a lot of similarities in the quarterbacks too. You know, is Purdy going to get paid? And I think, whatever we learn in these last few games might dictate some of that if he can carry the squad for a couple games here.
I mean, it's pretty interesting because you have almost two exact opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of time to throw in what is functionally a very similar offense, right? Tua gets rid of the ball literally faster than any other quarterback in the NFL. He's averaging 2.31 seconds per throw, per drop back. This year, according to PFF, he was leading the league again last year in terms of the fastest. That'd be 2 straight years where he's been the fastest average time to throw in football. Purdy is over 3 seconds. Like, he is in the Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson scrambling quarterback area of the average time to throw. So that's very unusual, I would say, to have two quarterbacks that are effectively running not the same offense, but a very similar, close cousins in terms of offense, at completely opposite ends of the spectrum of something that is a very schematic-driven data point, right? It's a sort of individual style thing as well, but that's a very scheme-influenced statistic, and they're at totally opposite ends of it.
It really is, and it's a whole different discussion. But maybe we overrate the tree stuff, and these guys work together because everything's going to diverge at some point. But there's still some core elements there. So I think it's a really fun matchup. That's why it's only 1.5. Miami being favored this weekend. Where are you going to go with this one?
I am going to go with. I have San Francisco written down. I don't like it. I'm going to change.
No. Shanahan versus assistants. Go lean into it.
All right, fine. San Francisco. Stick with what I put down.
I'll take San Francisco as well. Harry's taking Miami. So I'm going to say San Francisco is going to end up the season over 500.
And in order to do that, you got to win.
Miami can't beat them.
Yeah.
Got to win that.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.